Hold on. Welcome to the post-retreat integration class, and we're going to dive into the using the mind as a tool. But one thing that's really come up is this. Amanda was saying how when she came back from the first few retreats, it was uh, basically chaotic, right? It was like she got sick, or there was like a lot, and there's always chaos before new order. It's one of the understandings of how the principles work. And so it's really important to just recognize that the chaos that comes after a retreat is just part of the process and part of up leveling. And as Amanda's gotten more and more skilled, she's realized, oh, this time it's a lot more smooth, and then Jolene hops on and she's just not very smooth. And so it's okay. Like it's okay for it not to be smooth. It's okay for it to be smooth. And that's part of the process of not making things wrong, right? Can we escape that and go, this is exactly how it's supposed to be? There's an invitation here. And that's what I really loved about what we went over in the retreat was this idea that all the emotions, even lower back pain, even these things, like they're just here to communicate with us. They're giving us a message, and when we receive them, then they can move on and we can move forward. And we may want to call it chaos, right? It's the chaos before new order of anger, or of lower back pain, or of getting back in the routine and feeling discombobulated, and making that perfect in the way it is too, and loving that as well, right? Loving what is always the invitation. Yeah, beautiful. Buffy, welcome. Are you here, or is it Christian?
I'm here. It's me. Sorry,
Good.
I'm just a little bit indecent, so I'm not on video.
You're totally fine. How's it been for you?
It's been like really good. I felt like so overwhelmed afterwards, and I'm like, okay, I need to go back through and listen to the recordings and but like I've sent Helen an email to ask. She said she had some resources for me based on what I wanted to work on, and she you were right. Like she's sent like this huge email with all these resources and here's these videos, and I think it's so amazing. I felt like she was like she's just like so powerfully like knowledgeable and wants to help and like wants to believe in us to like really make the change we want. So I feel seen and heard and understood and believed in, So that's been like really powerful for me, just knowing that I have people after so many years of just feeling in the dark, like feeling kind of in the dark. So I'm like just super grateful and just like happy to like spend the next little while just kind of diving into my notes and rehashing and listening to the audios that she recorded. So I'm excited about that.
Yeah, I know. Like I feel
Yeah.
re-listening it with a pen and writing it down like crazy again, or I don't know, there's so much to get out of. So
I
yeah,
know.
there's always the recording, and I love to have people like, are you recording this? Because I didn't get it all.
I
So
know.
yeah, really beautiful. And that is the power that can, if you will take this retreat, what you learned, the notes you took, the handouts that we gave you, and really integrate it and review it and apply it, it's going to totally change your life. So that's fantastic.
Thank you.
Yeah, really beautiful. I wanted to quickly, before we dive into the what, why, how stuff that um we're in this month, I wanted to just go over the language of emotions as a quick review, in that we talked about them all weekend, but there's in the worksheets that we got, it went through these emotions, and I really got just like at the quick and dirty um, message of each one of them. And of course, if you want to dive in more, there's like in the worksheets and what we did, there's a lot of information there, but I'm going to give you the quick and dirty of each one. And if there's something else that comes up where you're like, oh, I felt like it was this, let's talk about it. But I wanted to give this to you just because it's almost like if you had a cheat sheet in your wallet and you were like, what? I want you to write these down because these have been super life-changing for me to have the quick and dirty. Oh, I'm feeling this. This is the message, you know? And if I want to go in and research it more, I can. And we have the resources of the language of emotions and Byron Katie's book. And oh, it's not Byron Katie, it's Brene Brown's book, right? But the first one that is in the worksheet is boredom. And the message that I have is I'm avoiding something. So I feel bored. It's what am I avoiding? Or the message is avoidance. And so if you can just pause and go, okay, what am I avoiding? Then you can come back into presence, right? And out of that boredom. So any other, like if you have a comment or an insight into the feeling of boredom, then let me know. I haven't actually played there very much in my life, but you know, with children, they'll go, I'm bored, you know? And so when they're bored, it's like that there's something that needs to be made conscious. Um,
So I tell my girls if they say they're bored, I tell them bored's a choice. You can choose something different if you prefer, and like just try to make it like sweet and simple. And so it gets them thinking, but I don't know if that's like a good. She hates that.
you
She's
could
afraid of
say like,
thinking.
what do you not want to do? Right?
Mm.
That's that's actually what, because there is something that they could do, but they're avoiding it, is what these teachings say. So it's something to play with, right? Like, no, this is set in stone, but I wonder if that would be a better question to ask of like, oh, what is it that you don't want to do right now that you know that would be good for you? Oh, a bath or go and clean the toy room, or you know, every stage is different, like doing my homework or um, reaching out to grandma. I don't know. Yeah. So play around with it. I don't know. I mostly see it with kids sometimes, but if it is the message is avoidance, then it would be interesting to play with that with kids, you know?
Yeah, I will. I love to play.
Right? Um, sometimes there's like anger also. We avoid things because there's some anger, underlying anger. So that's also something to look at. It's like I'm avoiding something because there's like resentment or anger that like a lot of times for me it comes back to victimhood of like like I'm angry that I have to do that, and so I'll stay stuck. So the next one is anger, and anger is that something needs to be protected or restored. And so what needs to be protected, you know? What needs to be restored? That's just the quick and dirty. If you feel that anger, whew, okay, go ahead, Jolene.
When you talk about just restoring something, can we talk a little bit more about that, about what must be restored?
Yeah, so uh for instance, I about 7 years ago, I got in a big fight with my mom, and I was furious, like so upset. And I learned a formula for having hard conversations and restoring the relationship with without it escalating into worse situations. So my model was people get angry, they say things to each other, and it gets worse, right? So my pattern was I get angry, I shut down so it doesn't get worse. But then I don't have the communication, and then the anger simmers in me rather than coming out of me, it would simmer in me, right? And then you get sick, then you get shut down, then you can't be fully expressed, all the things. So I learned the method of restoration, which is, hey, this is my illusion. This is my story, right? This is how it felt, but this is just me. And I know that I'm in my story and my illusion. And what was it like for you? And then you just listen with a heart, like listen from your heart, listen with that face of like, if my face was loving, what would it look like? Even though my brain is like exploding at how ridiculous this person is, right? But you then the third step is just the possibility I want to create is I want to create the boundary. I want to restore our relationship. I want us to be able to go on vacation without fighting. I want us to, I want you to honor who I am in the world, whatever it is. But before this conversation, you have to go in with your what, why, how. You have to go in with clarity. I want to create a new possibility with this person. So that's one example of how you would restore. You have to be able to speak your truth or make corrections. You have to take correcting action or ask for correcting action, right? What restoration looks like to me is you say sorry and you hold me, right? Like what would make me feel better? I recognize I'm in my story. I recognize I'm in all this, but what would feel good to me is if you just said sorry, but asking for what you need.
I'm like, what if it's just not? So I have a sister that I haven't talked to for years. And I've been in this place, so it's been kind of like moving along. So at first I was like, I'm just going to love her and keep trying and keep trying and keep trying. But then I realized that like in doing so, I was like attached to the outcome majorly because then it would hurt my feelings every time she would just completely ignore me until I just went into the hurt and then I got angry, and now I've been like not proud of how I'm showing up when I'm thinking about her or talking about her to like my other sister. And now I just yesterday I got the urge to the idea, the motivation to like send her a letter. And so I guess what I'm asking is like how can I go about that and be successful for the outcome in that, like completely not being attached to how she shows up or ignores me or doesn't at all. So like how can I do that without being attached to the outcome, I guess.
Yeah, beautiful. So it's like if you were to do your what, why, how, the how I know I'm successful, I'm gonna just give you the hack is I'm proud of how I showed up, right? It's so in your business when that's your desired outcome. And so the letter's not about her. All forgiveness is self-forgiveness, right? So when you write that letter, it's I want to show up in a way that I'm proud of. And that means that I reach out to her and I tell her that I love her, even though we haven't talked for a while. And I just want her to know that. And whether I hear from her or not, that's in her lane. What's my business is that I showed up in a loving way that honors her and honors me. And what she does with that is I'm unattached.
I see. Okay, so I'm on the right track. So let's see how it turns out.
Beautiful, right? Yeah. And then really just tuning into that, and maybe it's like, oh, she should have oh yeah, my why how, like, she doesn't even acknowledge or whatever, like however she acts is her lane. A your lane is that you're proud of how you're showing up.
Mm.
And that is always, I'm trying to see if it's always or not, but I think it's always when we just choose love, you know?
Mm.
And the trickiness of that and the complication of that is sometimes like we need some coaching, but if we can tune into that at least and see if that is coming from love, and if it is, then it'll turn out okay.
Okay.
Great question. Anger, if you look at anger, let's say if someone was hurt or being abused, that anger would come up as well, right? And it would be like there has to be some sort of protection. You move that person away, you to protect that, you create boundaries and that kind of thing. So anger gives us that message. Something needs to be protected or restored.
One more question.
Yeah.
What if there's zero things that you can do about that? Like there's nothing you can do to protect that situation, that person, place, or thing. It's just like totally out of your control. And that still, you just need to like smack yourself back into your own lane, or is there like validation in that? I guess I'm asking. I don't know.
I mean, unless you want to stay in anger, right?
Good point. Okay. I'm just trying to argue with myself out loud. It's okay.
I mean, I love your questions. They're so good. Like, but it's just like, yeah, if you want to hold on to the anger, you can keep fighting against reality. But if you're in your lane, you can get to a place where you take the appropriate action and then you can let go of the anger. Yeah. And that really is, it's like, it's so powerful when, like, you can feel anger that someone, like, school bombing or something, right? Like, or school shooting, like so much anger. And then you can look at it and go, what's in my control? I can write the families, or um, I can do whatever I can do. But at a certain point, you have to let go of it unless you want to just stay in that anger and simmer in it. You have to figure out what's in your lane and what you can protect and what you can restore. And then you have to let it go, right?
Release.
Yeah. And just be proud of how you showed up. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. So the next one is guilt and shame. And the message is that there's a call to make things right. Right? Someone's hurt you, someone was hurt, and it needs to be made right. So it's just asking what's been hurt and what needs to be made right, right? Like, it's really simple, but then we can come out of shame really fast. We can come out of guilt really, really fast if we'll just own it. But what people do is they don't take radical responsibility, right? And they turn it, the guilt and shame is so painful that they turn around and they try and put it on other people and blame other people, rather than just take full responsibility and look at it and go, what's been hurt and what needs to be made right, and then going and doing it.
That's like, I don't know. I feel like I really, really dealt with guilt and shame a ton. Until somebody told me like shame is just made up. It's just based on social constructs that tell you whatever's right and wrong, and you were out of the bubble of acceptable behaviors. And so then when I kind of looked at the shame portion of it like that, then it like helped me to just like snap back whenever I was having those feelings again. But the guilt, it's like, well, what do you do when Like you can't make it right, and you were the creator of that situation. Like it was completely your fault. And so I guess then yes, the whole just radical responsibility. And yes, I did that, and we're just gonna accept it and move on.
Yeah, it's like the definitions I've understood is guilt is I did something wrong, shame is I am something wrong, right? That's like the quickest, dirtiest way of saying it. And so if you feel guilt, it's like, okay, like what can I do to make it right? And again, it's the same thing with anger, like what can I do to protect and restore? But it's then at a certain point you do all that you can do in your lane and then you let it go, right? Or you can stay in it over and over. So it's what do you need to do so you're proud of how you are showing up right now. And the fact is everyone makes mistakes. And so there's also a call for self-forgiveness in guilt and shame. Yeah. And so it's like, I love how these are all, it's saying there's, if like emotions come up and then emotions can be can push us into action and then they can be let go of, right? It's recognize, release, and replace. So it's like we're doing this kind of thing over and over. We're just doing it in different ways. And this way is we feel the emotion, we recognize what it means, and then we take the action. And then again, we have to just let it go, right? And step into what we want. So what we want is now I get to choose my emotion. Now I get to choose to step into peace. Can I have peace instead of this is always the question.
And isn't that the recognize, release, replace that kind of the same as is that the same as success, where it's like consistency? This is the last one, and what are the first two?
Clarity.
Clarity.
Clarity, belief, consistency, and action. So
Like the
that's
same thing in different words, right?
the formula for success, which I guess it could. I haven't really thought of that, but it's the recognize, release, and replace is the formula for transformation, which is like how to make a change. And the formula for success is how to also make a change, I guess, to reach a goal, how to make something like happen in the 3D. So there's a connection there. I would say there's some sort of distinction, but it's basically getting what we want, right? So they both definitely help us get us what we want. Any other thoughts about guilt and shame? So I love that. It's first a call to make things right, and then it's another, and then after you do that, it's an invitation for self-forgiveness. And you may just be ready to just forgive yourself, right? If there's nothing you can do about it, at that point, it's just okay. And I am not perfect. I don't expect other people to be perfect. So I'm gonna forgive myself and move into, and then again, the replace is I'm gonna move into what I want now. Let that go and move in.
I think that when I first, like the first or second retreat I went to, I was really dealing with those two things a lot. And when Helen said, okay, whenever the only time you suffer is when you're not in your business. And I'm like, no, like, this is my business. This is my past. This is what I am responsible, like almost taking on like too much responsibility or accountability. And that I was just, that wasn't like allowing me to just let it go. And then she told me that, the past is God's business. And once she said that, I was just like,
It's so good, like mic drop. You're like, oh, okay. Yeah, that's good. That's
Yeah.
really, yeah, that's so good. At the beginning of this book, we talk about like the the quote, and I actually want to pull it up because I don't know if we read through it, but it says there's only three businesses, right? It's somewhere in here, but it says there's only three businesses. Like there's your business, God's business, and
Other people's
other
business.
people's business, right? I wish I could find that page because the quote is really good. I've read it like,
Page 8.
thank you. Thank you. Do you want to read it for us, Jolene?
Whose business? Byron Katie says it most succinctly. There are only three businesses: yours, God's, and other people's. You only suffer when you are not in yours. God's business is illness, accidents, weather, and all big disasters, and the past. I like that. Other people's business is what others think, feel, and do. Your business is only what you can personally control.
Yeah, beautiful.
That's actually really helpful to put the past somewhere. I had not heard that. So thank you for that. I like that.
Yeah, it's a really good distinction.
So it's a reminder, okay, it's the past is what it is. But I think what I'm hearing you say, Amanda, is being responsible for what you did in the past, because it was our actions. So working through the shame and the guilt, but it's still giving up that to the past to allow it, because it's still God's business.
So
Because
if
we
you
have no
look at it
control.
of, I still feel guilty over that. Well, is there anything that you can make right? If there is, then go do it, right? It's still that call is okay. But if you've done all that you can do to make it right, and you're still feeling shame and guilt, then you're in God's business, and it's just time to accept God's forgiveness, accept forgiveness. All forgiveness is self-forgiveness, is just accepting the fact that you are forgiven and then moving on. Yeah. Awesome. So sadness is the message that you just need to let something go. There's something that you need to let go of. That's a really powerful one to understand. And there's all sorts of things to do to let things go. But yeah, there's something to let go of is the message. And that's just a simple one. It's super powerful to understand. So I've known that for a long time, and it's helped me, just that instant knowing of what the message is. But yeah, the confusion is that a decision needs to be made. And that's a really, I know when I was married, I felt so confused. It was like I was in and out, and even in my relationships, right? I've stayed in relationships way too long. And I'm like in this constant state of confusion, like, what? I really love him, but he's not committed. I'm not committed. I don't like, we're not moving forward. And I stay in this state of confusion for way too long. If I could just have known like the quick and dirty message of that is a decision needs to be made, and then I could get out of confusion. Dang, I could have saved myself years of dating the wrong guy, you know? So I highly recommend you remember that one. I didn't have that one in my back pocket like I wish I'd had, but intention ends all ambiguity, which says at the end, and I love that.
Intention ends all ambiguity.
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 I didn't say it right, but
Interesting there where it says it's also being unable to decide act or believe in yourself or your decisions.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
really interesting.
Yeah. And the
Mhm.
call is to get confident in your decision and make the freaking decision, you know? Yeah, like get what you need to figure out how to believe in yourself enough to make the decision that needs to be made. Sometimes it's drumming up a whole lot of courage, right? Sometimes it's building up your confidence. Sometimes it's tuning into your intuition and then trusting that.
I always feel this like massive amount of discomfort in like the limbo phases of things. And I think that I guess I could definitely put it in this category, which makes it a lot easier for me to like digest
Yeah.
because it's whenever I have like decisions to make, I really do lack, but I guess then that would go along with like the fear of failure. That is evident like in patterns for me. But yeah, looking at like that's really helpful.
Yeah, we could go through each one of these and look at the fear that's associated with it, right? Like fear of failure stops you from making a decision, right?
Mm.
The fear of never having enough, like having that again, um losing something forever. There's the fear of sadness, right? Fear that that will never happen again, that it's permanent. um Fear that what you did cannot be restored is the fear of shame and guilt. The fear of that comes with anger is that you'll die, really, is like ultimately that you're in danger and that you can't be protected. And so fear of boredom is that you probably the fear would be that um you'll be uh that you're useless, that you're not useful, that you don't that you can't, right?
So that I'm not enough and no one will choose me and I can't procreate and then I will die.
Right. I mean, all of them are that you'll die. Like we know that, but like there's a little bit one before that, before you're afraid you'll die. Uh,
I'm bored.
yeah, the the confusion is I'm afraid that I I can't decide, right? I'm not good and I'm not like I don't have what it takes to make a decision, or that I'll make a mistake and that I'll make an irreversible permanent mistake that can never be um reconciled. Hatred is a really interesting one. This is a basic invitation to look at your shadows. So hatred is going to bring up a whole hairball of emotions, but ultimately there's a shadow. There's a contract that needs to be incinerated. There's a shadow that needs to be looked at. But how we do that is we name it, we validate it, we bless it, and then we reintegrate. So the call to look at your shadow is saying, name your shadow, validate your shadow, bless your shadow, and then move forward into what you want.
Can you touch on I was gonna ask in the group that you mentioned that the contract incineration. So I mean I think what I understand you're saying is that you have these predetermined contracts and it's now time to be like move to the next stage, or can you just touch on that?
Yeah, so shadows are like parts work is a great example of shadow work, right? You go in and you find the the anorexic one, right? That's a shadow. It's like, and so you find out what the contract is. The purpose is to make sure that she's controlled, that she makes sure that she doesn't lose control like she did when she was younger, right? So there's a control situation of like, I'm making sure that you're in control. And that's my contract with you. I decided that when you were 6 years old, and I've made sure that I've done my job to the utmost, and I am freaking exhausted and I hate my life, but I am making sure that you are in control at all times, right? And then you go, oh, thanks for working for me, right? We've all done this in our sessions together. It's like, thank you for the work you've done. And it's actually hurting me. It's hurting me physically and emotionally and spiritually and intellectually and financially. Like, you're not actually helping. And she's like, what? Like, yeah, I release you from that. I'm going to give you a new job and a promotion. I'm going to transform you into a part that actually helps me. So do you see how that contract is incinerated? And it's looking at the shadow, it's saying like, wow, I've got the angry one, or I've got the part that's really trying to help me in some way, but it's not helping anymore. So we're going to change that contract. Jolene. Oh, go ahead.
So when we're referring to that as like our contracts within ourselves, not with other people.
It can be.
Okay.
It can be with someone else. We always start with ourselves, right? It's the first is to look at ourselves, and then like once you're there and you're like, hey, we're good, and this person still keeps like hurting me or showing up in the way that I don't want or whatever, then it's also like looking at, but the first invite is, what is your shadow? Because really, you won't have hatred for someone that doesn't resonate with something within you, right? Like, if someone walked up to me on the street and was like, you have the ugliest hair, it's like a witch's hair, I hate your hair, I'd be like, oh. But if someone walked up to me and was like, you are the worst mom in the whole world, I'd feel hatred towards them, right? I'd feel like rage towards, I'd feel, because it's like resonating with a part in me, like, oh, like there's this deep fear that I like really am a bad mom or something, right? So whatever it is, but like you only feel these because there's some resonance within you. So that's why the first invite is that.
Can you like give a definition for shadow?
Yeah. Shadow is,
I hear a lot of people talk about that, but it's not necessarily negative, and it's not the dark. But so what is the actual, is it the opposite of what we want? I mean, I struggle with the shadow piece.
okay. So I would say it's the feelings, the emotions, the ways of being that we that aren't in the light, right? So uh so if there's a shadow, it's like it's the things that we aren't either looking at or acknowledging within ourselves, that usually the shadow will bring up some sort of anger, some sort of shame, some sort of sadness. The shadows are the parts of us that have these, what we would call negative emotions, but they're the parts that are kind of the dark side of our personality or our consciousness that we tend to avoid. And so that's why when we will just look at, if we'll actually shine light on it and call it a name and go, wow, anger, I see you. Wow, sadness, I recognize you. Like, and I can see why you're sad. I can see that it's a really sad situation, right? And then you bless and you say, thank you for bringing up this sadness so that I can see that there's something that I need to release. And I'm going to release that now because I'm choosing into joy. I'm choosing into peace instead of this. So what do we do with shadows is we just name them, validate them, and release them. Bless them. We bless them in the releasing, you know? But yeah, it's basically the dark side of our personality that our conscious mind tends to avoid, is what is like a definition. So then to move on to jealousy and envy. Jealousy is like a really fascinating one. I think jealousy can be a really beautiful thing when it's a call for a boundary, right? Like if you don't care about your relationship, you don't get jealous. But if you actually have something to protect, then jealousy will come up. But jealousy is asking you to create a boundary, that a boundary needs to be restored if there was a boundary, and that worthiness needs to be strengthened. Worthiness needs to be strengthened, and a boundary needs to be restored. So for example, I was at Burning Man and the Annie Lala was speaking and someone said, you know what, I'm pregnant and I'm feeling really jealous because my husband was just out till like 10 in the morning and he's out dancing and hanging out with everyone. I'm really struggling with a lot of jealousy. And she said, that's awesome. Like jealousy is showing you that you have something that you is worthy of protecting. And for you to like recognize that, and like there is a space for building up your worthiness and knowing that you are worth creating a boundary for and asking for your needs to be met. If you're like crazy jealous of everything someone does, it's like, well, there's some worthiness that needs to be looked at. But she said your husband has a responsibility to restore that and make you feel like, give you like almost make you feel safe, right? And there's an argument of that you're always responsible for your own safety, but there is also the argument that like asking for your needs to be met is the only responsibility you have in a relationship, right? So in that, there's a space for asking for her needs to be met, to say, hey, in order for me to feel safe, in order for like me to feel really cherished, this is what I want, and these are the boundaries. I want to, know where you're going, or I want to know when you're coming back, or I want us to go out together and come home together, or whatever it is. But it's just that's the invitation of it.
I guess what is the one that I feel like, isn't it anger all along was that boundaries have been broken?
Yeah. And so the message of anger is a boundary has been crossed, right? But the invitation of jealousy is to rebuild a boundary. The anger is some things needs to be protected or restored. So anger is saying, like, protect that boundary, right? Restore that boundary, or restore if it has to do with boundary crossing. Jealousy. So for instance, here's an example. Trey and I got divorced, and then he got into a relationship, and to me it seemed like, oh my gosh, he's so happy, and I I saw it he was on Facebook, and I was still friends with him on Facebook because we just recently been divorced. Or like not even, we weren't divorced, we were separated. And so the call for a boundary was like, my boundary is I don't need to be on his social media. I can't like that's a boundary, right? It's like, oh, this is great. I like cut him off and unfriended him on everything. And immediately I felt this like, I can breathe again,
Hmm.
right? And then the jealousy just like it wasn't there because I didn't have to look at it and I didn't have to see it. And I had to, and I was like, and then I looked at it and went, oh, like I talked to some friends and it was like, Paige, that's an illusion. You were in that marriage with him. Like he's not blissfully happy, you know? And it kind of like, oh, and then it was like, I started to look and see, oh yeah, I am so much happier without him, right? And so I went through the whole process of jealousy and I got the message of it and I took action. And then I stepped back into, oh, yeah, like stepping into what I wanted, which was to feel confident and to be grateful for the life that I do have. Right. The last few are panic and terror. Panic and terror is that something from the past needs to be healed. Now that's if you're like in a constant state of panic and terror. Like if there's actually something in front of you that is threatening your survival, all of these things, all of these emotions are just like get out of the dangerous situation, right? Like that's the message if it's actual. But what we're talking about is modern day living where tigers aren't chasing us and we're feeling fear. Our our literal lives are not being threatened, but we still have these emotions. So panic and fear is basically a sign of trauma and something from the past needs to be healed, right? So for example, like I just saw an Instagram today of this psychologist and she sits up and she's like and her friends her partner's like, hey, how's it going, are you okay, you know? And she's like, yeah, oh yeah, it's fine, right? And then she just gets on with her day and it's like, no, this is like a reoccurring thing where she goes into panic and terror. And so the invitation is that there's a past trauma that needs to be healed. And you'll keep having that experience until you actually address what's frozen in time. Grief is basically the call to do grief recovery work, right? It's a big, huge, fat stop sign that says stop. You're not going to get anything else done until you basically communicate what was not communicated. Grief is uncommunicated emotion. And if you don't stop and do the grieving, which is noticing what you need to say, what you need to communicate, and then saying it, then you can stay stuck in it and grief will stop you. And so that's why if someone doesn't do the grief work, when something happens years and years later, it's like they're still walking through quicksand. They can't move forward.
So I kind of couldn't grasp this concept on like a smaller level. Because I think for me, sometimes it's like, okay, I get these concepts on a greater scale, but then when I have to repeatedly like see them show up in my own life for my brain to just be like, yes, that is truth. And I've just learned over the years that that's how I learn best, or that's how things become like set in stone for me.
Yeah.
Anyways, I was thinking about that. I'm like, well, I don't feel stuck. I mean, I feel like, I feel sad that, Ellie's dad left, and I feel sad that like my dad will die someday, and so I'm like, I guess I'll do it on this, but I'm like, I don't really feel stuck. So anyways, I did all that, and then after the retreat, I like my thought patterns have really improved rapidly, but I've noticed that I've been getting like this nudge, because like the sticky spot for me would be around my sister that I was talking about for the letter, to write her the letter. Um, and I can really see it now. I can see that because I'm holding on to this like grief of this really special friendship that we had at a certain time in our lives is no longer here. And that does make me, you know, does make me sad. I have like all these things that I want to tell her, and she won't let me talk to her. And so, and it just, so then it really does put me back to that place of, well, I'm stuck, not in a huge way, but I keep kind of hitting these corners of like unconditional love, like at least thought, like, I don't know if I'm explaining it well enough, but basically I just kind of keep getting like snagged on like this sadness, or like, yeah, I don't know. I guess it would be
So
just grief of losing that.
yeah, so there's a distinction between grief and sadness, right? Sadness, you feel it like, oh, I'm sad, my dad will die sometime. And then the invitation is to let something go, right? So it's like, okay, so let go of the attachment. Like he could live 20 more years or you could, but there's something to let go of, and then you move through it. With grief, it's like a call to work. It's a call to like sit down and write the freaking letter and go through and not like with grief work, we don't say it to the actual person necessarily, almost ever, especially if it's like hard grief stuff. If it's like, you know, I do hypnosis sessions where you go and have a interaction with someone who's passed, right? And in that place, you can have the conversations and say the things that you want to be able to say to that person. But in general, we don't have that person with you that we have grief around, whether it's someone who's not talking to you anymore or someone who's in, um, has passed on or whatever. And so the typical grief work is that we use like surrogacy, or I don't know the word, proxy, right? We have someone. So if you were to sit and write those things out and say and say all the things that you want to say to your sister, but say it to your other sister who's there with you, or to a coach, and read that letter and communicate what your body and your mind and what your spirit really need to be able to say, then you can be released from that grief. And what would be interesting is to see how energetically there would be a space and opening for her to come forward, if that's what's in the highest level of interaction for you.
So then how do I go about writing a grief letter, or writing her a letter to communicate how I feel appropriately, and not like turn it into a grief letter?
It is a grief letter. It would be the exact same process that we did at the beginning of the mastermind, where you write out the timeline. You were born. I was so happy to have a little sister or big sister.
Little youngest.
I'm so happy to have a little sister. And, we'd laugh and play on the swings. You stole my cookie. I stole your cookie, like whatever it is, until it was like, I left, you had a baby, whatever it is, and just the highs and lows. And you write it all out and you say, hey, like, I want to tell you, I'm so grateful for all of these things. And this is what really hurt. And this is what really hurt. And this is what I've been so sad about. And this is what I cry about. And this is what I really wish could happen. And I really wish this had happened. And this is, and you just write out the grief letter. You write it all out and you say, like, and I'm letting go of what all of this means. And I'm open to whatever's possible, whatever it is, however you want to end it, and say, and I love you. And then you go and you read it to me or to Jolene or to your sister, like your one of your other family members. But they have to know how to listen. They're not like, oh yeah, totally. It's just they listen, and you release that emotion until you stop crying and you stop having a charge, and you keep reading the part that's supercharged, and you read it again and again until it's just at a neutral place. And that's how we deal with grief. It's just, I don't know a better way.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so then maybe I should do that before I write her an actual letter, because I don't want to get the two mixed up.
Absolutely. Yeah. And you typically don't want to, yeah, you definitely don't want to read the letter to her, that letter. And you can come to a place where you're in a place that to write like a very loving, open-hearted letter, but you have to do the grief work around it first for it to have the highest outcome. Yeah. Jolene.
So on that piece, it says, the practice is stop, drop everything, and ask your internal questions. Help me know what those eternal questions are.
Internal questions would be like, what's the scenario? What do I feel about it? What happened? What do I wish happened? And what do I want to happen? Right? It's the questions of the Grief Recovery Handbook.
Okay.
Yeah. It's just asking those questions of like, what really happened? Right? Like so many, especially that's why it's so hard when like a child dies or something, like you lose someone suddenly, because there's so many questions, but we don't actually pause and ask them and then listen for the answers. We don't actually write it down and go, this is what happened. We just go, oh my gosh, what happened? Oh my gosh, like I was so horrible. Oh, why did that happen? Right? And then we just get stuck in the grief cycle. You just get churned in it and just keep like stuck in the sand, the quicksand.
And something I heard, and I mean, help me, because I'm using Amanda's example in her wanting to say all these things to her sister, but doing the letters and writing that all out. But then the letter that would be written to the sister that could be received would just be the love and the desire to reconnect and restore, nothing of the past, because that may not ever resolve anything there. But you know, just being in a space that I've let all that go, and not even say that, but knowing that you've let it all go, and then the letter would just be, I miss you, I love you, and I want to spend time with you.
Yeah.
Basically,
and
right?
if that's what she wants, right? Sometimes you do the grief and stuff and it's goodbye, right? Like
Okay. It could be, okay, this is no longer needed. Okay.
and then a letter to her would be unneeded, right? It's the grief's been done. Like for instance, with your boss, like to do a grief letter and say, hey, this is how it was. These are the highs, these are the lows, this is what happened. And to do that letter, to read it and to be able to get that out. And then like, I don't think you'd want to write him a letter. If you did, it would be, hey, I hope you're doing well, and I'm doing well too, if that's something. But do you know what I mean? Like it doesn't need to be told or given to them.
But I guess where I was trying to work that out in my brain is writing that through, and the end of the letter is goodbye. It very well could be, even in Amanda's situation, could to say, okay, goodbye. But do you know, I'm just trying to work it through. Not that that's what we're gonna do, Amanda. I'm just using your example.
It's great, yeah. And it could be goodbye to the relationship that we had in the past. And I hope that we can create something brand new.
That's
Mm.
perfect. Yeah, because it'll never be like it once was, and that goes across the board, even if there wasn't hard feelings between us.
Relationships are always changing. My relationship with Dana will never be the way it was, because we're just both evolving human beings, but there's no hard feelings or anything wrong with our relationship, right? So, but yeah, if you want to find freedom, it's again, if you want to stay in grief, you can just stay in grief. But if you want to get out of grief, if you want to get out of any of these emotions, listen to the message, right? The message is stop. Just stop and do the work and then come out. And the more you do it, the faster you get. Like I can do a grief, like I guess maybe that's why I kind of rushed through it with all of us, because I was like, all you do is you do a chart and you read the letter. Like that's because I can get through it so fast now because I know how to do the chart and I know how to read it, and then I just read it to someone and I get through it pretty quick because I know that the process works.
Well, I think there's power in that too, because then you don't really get fixated on the details. You don't get, because I mean, I took time, but I didn't take as much time as I originally like viewed it needed. But I feel like there's a lot of beauty in that. You can just like look at something and be like, look at all these beautiful things. Yeah, these bad things happen. Yeah, these beautiful things happen. And then now we're gonna open to new possibilities and close that chapter.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's yeah, it doesn't have to be super complicated, but it definitely has yeah, it has a lot to give us. So there's the next class. I do actually want to go through the other 7. I think this is a great thing, but the kind of the biggest point of all of this, and I think it's worth going through again and just but making this like really just go through this, memorize these, because they're going to be like these really powerful it's almost just like learning Chinese or learning Spanish when you go and you're like, oh, okay, I know donde está el baño means where's the bathroom? Like, like as soon as you know it, you're like, oh, okay, good. Like el baño ahí, and you're like, oh, okay, now I know that where the bathroom is, and so it's just like, okay, great. Now I don't have to hold my bladder and be uncomfortable for 6 more hours at the bus stop, right? Like we can get out of discomfort a lot faster if we can learn this language. And they say that if you learn 20,000 words, you'll be able to communicate 90% of the time in Spanish. And there's something like 250,000 words, but you can learn this. So what I'm saying is like, this is the 2% that will give you 90% of the benefit, right? If you just learn the quick and dirty, oh, I feel sadness. Okay, there's something to let go of. Okay, I can do that. Boom. I'm out of sadness 100% times faster than anyone else that it experienced sadness, right? And then we can just step into more peace. Like what if I could have peace instead of this? Such a beautiful question.
Well, I saw such a huge difference in my life since I understood the meaning of fear.
Yeah.
Oh, it's
Yeah.
just like totally snaps me out every single time. Oh, I just need to, it's just like it's literally like your body's talking to you in a sort of way that like you said, yeah, it's just a different language. I don't know. And so I'm like, let me give me these shorthands. I need to, because I feel like I've geeked out on this stuff before, but for some reason I don't know if it's like why I'm doing it now or just the place that I'm in now, but it's having such a massive effect on me in comparison to previously. So super
Yeah.
excited.
Yeah, and then it just comes back to what we're studying is the what, why, how. Like you keep coming back to, and what do I want instead, right? And then go into creation. But if you're stuck in depression or you're stuck in anger, then that's not even where you create from. You can't go into what do I want? I just don't want to feel this, right? Like that's really It's like a drowning person being like, okay, let's build a house together. It's like, there's no possible way. You can't co-create a house together with like, you can't make a plan to build a house when you're like in raging anger, you know? So just get out of the emotion by getting the message and taking the action you need. And I just really like how concise and simple Helen made it when she just um the part where it's name it, validate it, bless it, right? Name it, validate it, bless it. And that's with all the emotions. Name it, validate it, bless it. But in the validation, you have to validate who it is. Like how I don't like being validated if someone just doesn't even know me, you know? Like,
Mm.
so the emotions are kind of like that. Like you can see it, but then if you don't validate it, if you don't say, hey, okay, I see you, and you're asking me to create a boundary here, or oh, hey, I see you, you're telling me to stop. That's validating. It says, hey, okay, like you have brown hair, and then walk away like, I don't feel validated, I don't feel seen, I don't feel witnessed, I don't feel loved at all, I don't feel like my message is being received, right?
Well, and I like that too. It's like if it's impersonal or like, oh, you're such a good mom. How do you know?
Ah,
You know, it's like,
yeah, that's such a good example. So yeah, if we see them as like loving visitors, you know, like, oh hi, okay, anger, I see you and I know who you are. And so I'm gonna really like validate the fact that you're giving me the message that a boundary's been crossed. Okay, thank you for that message. I'm going to take the action that needs to be taken, and now I'm going to move forward and I'm going to let you go so I can move into what I'm actually creating in the world, which is what I want to be, is, as Dana would say, joy, or what I want to be is light and love, or whatever you're like, having that core knowing of what you keep coming back to. Your what? Sometimes it's my what is, okay, now I'm going to go make dinner. And sometimes it's, okay, now I'm going to step back into light and love, right? Like it's, but I like having a quick and dirty for myself too. Like that's the name of this master class, is like the quick and dirty, right? Like what's the quick and dirty? But the quick and dirty for me is like, if I jump back into the quick and dirty of like, it's my mission statement, right?
get
I
her done.
like love. Like that's my mission statement. So I can come back to that when I'm just, my quick and dirty for the what, why, how is the, I know I am proud of how I showed up. Right. So we can always go deeper and figure it all out. But if you need to just come out of it and get into something else, it's these things. So we'll keep going into depression, suicidal urges, loneliness, a few other things next week, but I wanted to drop in and do this quick review this week.
I just want to share a win. I know we're like super over, but I'll just really quickly. So Ellie, I told her, she keeps saying, I hate myself. I hate myself. She's really sensitive, right? So, and it bothers me, but I'm trying not to be reactive because she's reactive to my reactiveness. And so I'm like, hey, you know who else is listening? Your mind. And she's like, no, I am the boss, not my mind. I'm going to tell my mind what to do. And I'm like, yes, you do that.
Oh, that's sweet. I like that.
Super.
That's super smart. Oh, beautiful. Okay, share your quick biggest takeaway.
Take away. Go, Jolene. Go, Jolene.
Me? Oh, sorry. I didn't hear. Say that again. I was reading
What's your biggest takeaway from today?
from today. just focusing on, really, this is really helpful to break down, these are words that we say all the time, mad, sad, glad, all of that. And I didn't look through these other than just the one that I really focused on. But even that, as we're talking, there's other things that pop up. You're like, oh, okay. So really knowing and understanding what the emotions are and what they invoke, whether on guilt and shame, a call to make things right. I mean, that's like, oh, okay. Sadness, letting go of something. I mean, those, I really like just making it very simple. But also understanding my emotions. What is it? Rather than, like I said, just lumping them into sad, glad, mad. But there's some deeper stuff here. So thanks for the reminder, and even just going just a little bit deeper on those.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you. Amanda.
I've just really come to a place where I'm just finding like a lot of synchronicity, and I just super love geeking out on that. So it just these aha moments, but okay, it's like we've been teaching these, like we've been learning these, like, okay, recognize, release, replace, clarity, consistency, and belief, and then name, validate. What's the third one?
Name, validate, bless.
Yeah, so they're all three the same. Like, if you really look at them, they're exactly the same. They're just slightly tweaked in order to apply to like certain situations. So if we just get like that core concept down of just like looking at it, like diving into it, and then being consistent about it, that was like I think my biggest thing today. Because I get stuck in the verbiage, I get stuck in the, wait, what did we say? What is specific? I get like all like weirdo and like perfectionism and stuff, and I get hung up on these things, and I lose focus of like what I'm trying to accomplish. And so when I could like make it apply in like different areas of like the same concept, then it flows much easier for me in just the way that I think. And so I'm like, oh, they're basically this, they're the same thing. Like, just, okay, name
I
it.
like that. I love like finding the correlations. You're saying name, validate, bless, clarity, belief, consistency, action. The what, why, how, or what's the other one that's the same?
Recognize, release, replace. So
Yeah.
the success, transformation, and then Helen's shorthand, name, validate, bless, to emotions. So
Okay.
it's like you're dealing with something that is hard, and you can bring it out of discomfort and into peace and something better, or something. I don't know. I'm trying really hard with my language here, but it's getting hooked up on that too. See, I get hooked up on like the little things, and then the wide focus of it kind of gets a little blurred. But yeah, to me, if I can like simplify those like big, because I look at it, I'm like, okay, I have to get clarity about it. What does that mean? Oh, okay, I need to name it. What does that mean? I need to recognize it. What does that mean? And I get stuck in the details like too much. And if I can just like kind of wish all that away and be like, okay, what are we actually doing here? We are bringing light to something, bringing love to it, and consistently replacing it, with something that will bring us more joy, or whatever it is that we're aiming for. So
Yeah, I love that. Like, I'm so all about simplifying and finding like the structure of it. But that's really mind-blowing for me. I didn't see that connection with all
yeah,
of those different things.
I just realized it right now. We were writing it down. I was like, hey, wait.
Hold on a second. We saw like 7 different things and they're all saying the same thing. Whoa, isn't that's the law of correlation?
Yes, I'm
No?
seeing a lot of that in my life
See it
right
one
now.
place, you see it everywhere, but like these formulas for success, formulas for getting into a place that you want to get, which everyone is basically just wanting peace, right? Like, yeah, so how to get to peace. And there's like these 6 different ways, but basically they're all the exact same.
Right?
But
That's
with their own variations and distinctions and playgrounds you could play in for your whole lifetime. But it's really, really powerful to see that they're all saying basically the same thing. So
well, it's like Dana said with the math thing. It's like a master mathematician will know how to explain one certain concept 7 different ways or whatever the number was. It's like the same thing to me.
yeah, see, you're a master.
Oh.
Oh, I love you guys so much. Thanks for being on. And yeah, we'll see you next week. It's gonna be good. Oh,
I
Jolene.
just have one more question. To go back and listen to some of our past sessions, where do we find those, or are they just in all the emails that you send? Because sometimes they don't come through, or what's your best guidance on that?
On YouTube, it's on my YouTube channel that has a section for Spiral Up Mastermind.
So what is it?
Spiral Up Mastermind, I think, is the channel. It's the playlist on my channel. So hold on one second and let me find the exact name of it. My computer's and I'll be putting this one on Spiral Up Mastermind 2024.
Okay.
And like I think that there's a few. I actually was having my VA put some of them on that I haven't put on lately. So there's only 7 on there right now, but I'm gonna put this one on. I'll get last week's and stuff on as soon as I can. So yeah, but you can geek out on that. You can geek out on a bunch of stuff on my YouTube channel if you want. So
Yeah,
Didn't even know you had one.
there you go.
no.
I'll send you the link right now.
Oh yeah, can you email it? Well, I guess I can copy it, huh? Off of there. If you send
Yeah,
it.
actually stick it in our WhatsApp chat. That would be great.
Good idea. Good idea. Here. That's the list of all my playlists, but on there you'll be able to see the Spiral Up, but I'll put it in the chat. And actually I kind of want to share it after I've put this one up, and I've put a bunch of them up, but I will. That was actually something I wanted. Maybe he did. I asked my VA to do that a couple weeks ago.
Okay, it says, oops, you don't have permission to view this page.
Same.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, from that link you just shared, that's what it says.
Okay. Huh, that's interesting. Okay, I'll put the right link in, but
That's always good.